October 14th, 2024, Game 1 of the American League Championship Series between the Cleveland Guardians and New York Yankees. Starting pitcher Alex Cobb exits in the third inning, leaving the bases loaded with 2 outs. In comes rookie long reliever Joey Cantillo, who's never made a postseason appearance before and has just 9 big league outings to his name. Here he makes his postseason debut in one of the most unwelcoming arenas that baseball has to offer, Yankee Stadium, in October. His first pitch is in the dirt. His second pitch is barely above ground level. His third pitch is spiked before it even reaches home plate, popping up in the air and allowing the runner from third base to score the second run of the game. This would be the first of 4 wild pitches that Joey Cantillo would throw in this inning. This allowed the Yankees to rally for 4 runs despite not registering a single hit against Cantillo. The Guardians would lose this game and the series in 5 games total. This was, to put it bluntly, an absolute nightmare scenario for a playoff debut, and it's something that Joey Cantillo will likely have to sit with for quite a long time. But he's not the first player in Major League history to endure this level of humiliation on this national stage, because 25 years before Cantillo ever took the mound in this game, another young southpaw had a far more infamous outing. The only other pitcher in baseball history to throw 4 wild pitches in a single postseason inning. An outing so bad that it helped the general public refamiliarize themselves with the term the yips. The yips had sparingly been a part of our game for decades to that point. We've seen a handful of pitchers throughout the past 2 decades go through battles with the yips. There's a rise in adrenaline and heart rate and blood pressure, leading to fight or flight mechanism engaging. Between the 2 sides, the system starts locking up. In 2000, Rick Ankiel was the system that locked up. He was baseball's #1 overall prospect. That same year, he started Game 1 of a playoff series as a 20-year-old. And just 2 years later, his career as an MLB pitcher was over entirely. This is the tale of how a mental injury derailed Rick Ankiel's promising pitching career, forcing him into a transformation that became one of the best stories in the history of baseball. If you enjoyed today's video, please leave a like on the video and consider subscribing to the Jolly Olive channel. Like many first-round picks that came before and after him, Rick Ankiel was a high school phenomenon. He allowed just 4 earned runs in 74 innings of work in high school, striking out 162 batters, which amounts to a near 20.0 K/9 rate. 3 days before attending his first college class, he signed a $2.5 million bonus with the St. Louis Cardinals as a second-round pick in the 1997 draft. That bonus was the 5th highest ever handed out to an amateur player in MLB history at the time. The very next year, he was the minor league pitcher of the year in the organization. By 1999, he was Baseball America's Minor League Player of the Year, and by 2000, that same affiliate deemed him the #1 prospect in all of baseball, ahead of the likes of future studs of the game like Vernon Wells and Alfonso Soriano. #1 prospect in all of baseball. This is an accomplishment that should not be taken lightly. It's a spot usually reserved for players that are as close as possible to being a lock for MLB success. In 2013, it was Jurickson Profar, who was recently an All-Star, so I guess Baseball America was just like, 10 years early on that one. But in 2012, it was Bryce Harper. In 2011, it was Mike Trout. In 2010, it was Jason Hayward. In 2009, it was Matt Wieters. Wait, what? In 2009, it was Matt Wieters? This accomplishment alone was a remarkable feat by Rick Ankiel, who dealt with a troublesome home his entire life leading up to this point. Rick Ankiel made his debut in the major leagues at age 19 in the 1999 season and impressed many in his 9 appearances. Ankiel secured his first MLB save in a 6-out effort where he punched out every San Diego Padres hitter he faced besides Tony Gwynn, because no one punches out Tony Gwynn. His combination of a fastball in the mid to high 90s and a devastating curveball that fell off the table made for an electrifying arsenal. The velos may seem run-of-the-mill now, but 25 years ago, a 19-year-old throwing this hard, this accurately was a scary thing for the rest of the league. This built things up for a lot of anticipation heading into the 2000 season, where Rick Ankiel was set up to be a full-time member of the starting rotation for the entire year. The 20-year-old southpaw was an absolute force in his first big league season. Despite being the 2nd youngest player in all of MLB that year, Rick Ankiel dominated the league over 30 starts. He struck out over a quarter of all batters he faced, and his strikeout percentage was only outdone by the great Randy Johnson in the National League, who was on his way to his 2nd of 4 straight NL Cy Young awards. He finished top 10 among all qualified pitchers for various major stats like earned run average with a mark of 3.50, as well as batting average against, in which his .214 clip against was 4th in MLB. This remarkable campaign landed him with a second-place finish in National League Rookie of the Year voting, losing out to Rafael Furcal of the Atlanta Braves despite being worth more value in terms of wins above replacement. As it stands, he's one of just 3 pitchers in the last 30 years of baseball to accomplish a 3-WAR season or better at age 20 or younger. The list includes just Zach Greinke and Jose Fernandez as the other 2 members. This was the type of upward trajectory that Rick Ankiel was on at such a young age, and many believed it was only a matter of time before he became the best pitcher in the National League. With Ankiel's help, the St. Louis Cardinals won the National League Central Division and returned to the playoffs for the first time in 5 years. Down to just 2 healthy starters by season's end, many assumed the ball would be handed to veteran Darryl Kile for Game 1 against the defending National League champion Atlanta Braves. Kile even answered to the media the day before as though he'd be getting the ball for Game 1. However, this was actually just a ploy by veteran manager Tony La Russa to protect Rick Ankiel from any additional pressure for this game. Rick Ankiel was in fact the guy getting the ball. Ankiel, confident as ever, said his only worry was, quote, getting a base hit off Greg Maddux because he thought the pitching would just take care of itself like it always had. I'm going to quickly interrupt today's story to thank today's sponsor, which is DirecTV. With DirecTV, you can watch your MLB games satellite free. No satellite dish required to enjoy the game that we all love. Baseball is not just a sport, it's a passion. You and I both know that, and DirecTV should be your home for baseball. So if you're ready to transform your baseball viewing experience, head to directv.com/johnboy now. You can also scan the QR code on the screen. Learn more about the different ways to transform your baseball viewing experience for the better in 2025. And thank you to DirecTV for sponsoring my video today. Now let's see what's in store for us in the next chapter of this story. Game 1 of the NLDS was all Cardinals from the start. The lineup pounced on Greg Maddux for a 6-run first inning, while their 20-year-old ace struck out 2 batters through 2 innings, facing the minimum against him. Heading to the 3rd inning, the game looked as in control as possible for St. Louis. Facing leadoff hitter Greg Maddux, Ankiel narrowly missed the zone with a fastball and ended up walking the opposing pitcher on 4 pitches. After getting his first out, Ankiel spiked a slider to Andrew Jones, advancing Greg Maddux. He instantly thought to himself, man, I just threw a wild pitch on national television, completely unaware of how much worse things were about to become. His next attempt, a fastball, did the opposite, sailing high above everyone at home plate. Jones would walk on 5 pitches, and Ankiel works the next batter, Chipper Jones, to a 2-2 count before sailing a breaking pitch. In a full count, Rick gets the strikeout for the 2nd out of the inning, putting him 1 out away from a clean frame despite 3 wild pitches in this inning alone. Andres Galarraga works him for a full count in a 7-pitch duel before Ankiel airmails yet another breaking pitch, this time allowing a run to score. Rick Ankiel threw 5 wild pitches in this 3rd inning alone, walking 4 and allowing 4 earned runs to score. Though the St. Louis Cardinals would win this game and the series as a whole, many questions loomed about what exactly happened to Rick Ankiel in his postseason debut. Ankiel was perhaps the most confused of all, remarking that it seemed like things just started to speed up so fast, and that he knew what he wanted to do, but his body and brain would not allow him to do it.
He's lost all his mechanics, and he can't get the ball to the point where the catcher can even catch it. 21-year-old pitcher with electric stuff, great fastball, great curveball. What's this going to do to his future? You're talking about a career here, and I don't think that's overstating it.
There's some sociological thing, like in particular, it's protecting you from something because there's protecting something else. There's something deeper. There's some deeper reason why you have this. At the unconscious level, your body's not stupid. There's some good reason for it.
Throughout his entire upbringing, Rick Ankiel's father was a figure of fear for him. Rick Ankiel's father coached him hard whenever he was around, but he was also arrested 15 times from the time Rick Ankiel was born to the time he was named baseball's top prospect in 2000. For most of his life, Rick and his mother, Denise, had only each other to depend on, while his father would disappear for weeks on end, and upon returning, inflict a lot of emotional and physical pain on his family. His manager, Tony La Russa, has since stated that his decision to start Rick Ankiel over Darryl Kile in this game was one that perhaps haunts him more than any other decision he's ever made as a manager. In addition to the 50,000 fans in the stands as well as millions watching at home, one of those viewers was Rick's high school pitching coach, Charlie Frazier. He saw his former teenage ace throw across his body and stand up on his follow-through, rudimentary mechanical issues that a major league ace normally wouldn't go through. When Frazier called Ankiel after the game to ask him what his pitching coaches were teaching him, Rick responded that they had taught him nothing, and that wasn't entirely untrue. It was an open secret in the Cardinals organization that, for years to that point, coaches had been instructed not to tamper with their acclaimed prospect. On one occasion in the minors, Ankiel hit the backstop multiple times with wild pitches, and when he consulted his pitching coach at the time, he simply responded, "I'm not allowed to mess with you." After a decade plus of flying solo as a person in general with an unreliable home situation, Rick Ankiel was now flying solo as a professional pitcher as well, with no one to lean on. And I have to believe this was a contributing factor to what happened next. 9 days later, Rick Ankiel took the ball once again for Game 2 of the National League Championship Series against the New York Mets. But instead of a reset, it was more of the same. The young lefty allowed a pair of runs and got yanked before the end of the first inning. Ankiel made his third and final playoff appearance in Game 5 at Shea Stadium, walking 2 more batters and issuing a pair of wild pitches before once again getting mercifully lifted from the game. All in all, Ankiel walked 11 batters and threw 9 wild pitches in 4 innings of work during the 2000 playoffs, a run of outings that would change his life forever. Ankiel spent the offseason mimicking other pitchers' mechanics, meeting with sports psychologists, throwing a ball at the side of his house for hours on end, and dealing with nightmares of not being able to throw a single strike. The new year would not rid him of this affliction. Come his first start of the 2001 season, the monster inside him had only grown since its introduction 7 months prior. Unable to find a remedy to quell the anxieties inside him, Ankiel turned to a last resort: vodka. He recently remarked in a radio interview that prior to his first start of the season, he was, quote, scared to death, feeling that he had no chance to succeed. He turned to alcohol, even though he had never drank before a game before. Bear in mind the numerous bouts of alcoholism that Ankiel himself observed from his father throughout his entire childhood, and you can only imagine his desperation at this point. For the day, he was able to put his demons aside. Rick Ankiel struck out 8 batters in 5 quality innings, outdueling Randy Johnson and the Arizona Diamondbacks. That win would be his lone victory of the entire 2001 season. He tried the same strategy against the Houston Astros in his next start, but the anxiety would win out this time. He would walk 3 batters in a row in the second inning, then hit his 4th batter to bring in a run. He issued 5 free passes in both this start and his next start, and each of his next 3 outings would be more of the same. By mid-May, he had a walk per 9 rate of 9.4, far and away the highest mark of any pitcher in baseball that season. The Cardinals demoted their young lefty to help him get his head straight, but the problems only worsened at AAA. He pitched to an ERA over 20, walking 17 batters and throwing a dozen more wild pitches in a little over 4 innings of work. By the end of the 2001 season, Rick Ankiel had plummeted all the way back down to rookie ball, just a year after finishing 2nd in Rookie of the Year voting in the National League. His next season was marred with injuries as Ankiel struggled over 10 starts in AAA before undergoing Tommy John surgery, taking him off the field for the next 2 years. As if the rehabbing and the yips were not enough of a mental torment, Rick Ankiel also had to deal with the grief of losing his friend and mentor, fellow Cardinals starting pitcher Darryl Kyle, who died suddenly of a heart attack in June of 2002. Believe it or not, Ankiel made one final return to the major leagues as a pitcher in 2004, making 5 outings in September of that year. But he had been mentally defeated by 4 years of constant, unrelenting adversity and made the gut-wrenching decision to retire as an MLB pitcher at age 24. Rick's mind and body had failed him, and the Cardinals organization did little to help a situation that they clearly did not fully understand. After dealing with the humiliation of failing miserably on a national stage, plus losing a friend and mentor unexpectedly, and then also dealing with arm injuries on top of all of that, I think myself and you watching at home probably would have retired too, and no one would have blamed us. So you can imagine everyone's surprise when Rick Ankiel announced what he was doing next. Rick Ankiel sat at home in the offseason following the 2004 campaign, a season where his St. Louis Cardinals made it back to the World Series without his help. He got a call from his agent, Scott Boras, who asked him when he was ready to return to the game of baseball. Rick pleaded to let him retire from pitching in peace, but his agent retorted, saying that he never mentioned the word pitching. Would you want to try being an outfielder? Rick Ankiel, when he heard this, was confused initially, but he sat with this proposal, envisioning himself gunning down base runners with his electric arm and stroking long home runs. He had always loved to hit, batting at a respectable .250 average in his rookie season in 2000. He was still athletic enough to try and learn new things on the fly and obviously still had love for the game of baseball, just not so much pitching. Ankiel called his agent Scott Boras back and told him he was in 100%. It wasn't going to be easy, and there'd be no guarantee that Rick would ever make it back to the big leagues in this new role. But to him, it was a hell of a lot better than trying to throw strikes on the mound, and he felt a burden lifted off his shoulders when he returned to the field. In his first season as an everyday outfielder, Ankiel crushed 21 home runs in 85 games with an .853 OPS between Single-A and Double-A in the Cardinals minor league system. He steadied the momentum into 2006 spring training, where he was one of the most impressive fielders and power hitters in the camp. Finally, in late August, 3 years after his last MLB appearance as a pitcher, the St. Louis Cardinals promoted Rick Ankiel, the outfielder, back to the big leagues. In his very first game back with the Cardinals, Rick Ankiel received a series of standing ovations and then returned the favor by crushing a 3-run home run.
Ankiel out to deep right field, has a chance to leave the ballpark, it's gone! 3-run shot for Rick Ankiel back in the major leagues. Remarkable.
The same year where Barry Bonds set the record for most home runs by a single player in baseball history, this might have been the most memorable and emotional home run of all. In his first 22 games as an MLB outfielder, Rick Ankiel was one of the best hitters in all of baseball. In this near month-long sample, he had the 5th best OPS in all of baseball, trailing only David Wright, Carlos Pena, Carlos Beltran, and Alex Rodriguez. Only Rodriguez put together a better slugging clip in this window as well. His next year, which was his first full season as a position player, he continued to impress. He once again had an OPS that was 20% better than league average and smacked 25 home runs in 120 games, a top 20 mark among all primary outfielders. You might look at these numbers and think that they're good, but not necessarily jump off the page, but you have to consider his adversity in getting here, his track record as a pitcher, the injuries that he had leading up to this, and then you look at these numbers and think this is nothing short of a miracle. Ankiel would go on to play 7 seasons as an outfielder after making his triumphant return in 2007. Though his bat would wane in the ensuing years, his arm was still known as one of the strongest in the game, and he was revered for being an exemplary clubhouse teammate. Most notably, he became a mentor to a young Bryce Harper when he made it over to the Washington Nationals in 2012. When many teammates would hit the bars after games, Rick Ankiel would stick with the 19-year-old Harper to a restaurant that they could both enjoy. When promising young reliever Aaron Barrett experienced his own case of the yips in the 2014 Division Series, Rick Ankiel connected with him and helped him approach the mental side of his game. This led to Ankiel becoming the life skills coordinator of the Washington Nationals in 2015 after his retirement from playing. Before the arrival of Shohei Ohtani, Rick Ankiel was one of just 2 players in Major League Baseball history to make 30 starts in one season and hit 25 home runs in another season. The only other player in this elite company is Babe Ruth. It's players like Rick Ankiel that take baseball from a sport dictated by statistics and numbers and transforms it into a game that can feel larger than life, and his story is one of the best that I've ever covered on this channel. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed today's video, please leave a like and consider subscribing to my channel. I'd really appreciate it. That'll do it for me though, and I'll see you guys next time.